Glad to see you here, glad to be here. So as you know, or at least as you're finding out, our pastor's trying real hard right now to encourage the spirit and practice of sharing testimony. I know he's approached some of you already about it, and I look forward to hearing from any of you that choose to do that. So anyway, it occurred to our pastor that this injury I sustained and the experience I had gone through earlier this summer would make for good subject matter for a testimony. And of course, I love to hear myself talk, so I agree. So I think the most constructive way to do this is to just kind of run you through the chain of events as it happened, and then circle back and highlight a couple of particular moments where I really did feel blessed, even in the middle of what was really a crisis at the time. So it was the Friday before Labor Day. I was done with my actual work for the day, Memorial Day, I mean. The Friday before Memorial Day, I was done working for the day and decided to just work on my race car for a couple hours. And I was modifying a part, this part, heavy part, in one of my machines, and it flew out of the machine and clunked me right here where this nice scar is. And basically instantly knocked me unconscious. A couple of my kids were in the garage when this occurred. They shook me back conscious, got me back on my feet. At first I was pretty intent on calling 911, but then once I took stock of the situation, decided to just get a ride to the emergency room. Brianna drove me to the emergency room. At that point, I got a CAT scan or MRI scan, whatever kind of scan, which revealed that my skull was indeed broken. So they told me it was cracked. So what I was picturing is a crack in my skull similar to the cut on my flesh. That is not how a skull cracks. It's more like when a big rock hits a windshield and just spiders out from the point of impact. So pretty creepy injury. Something of a paradox, this injury, because I've been describing it as being worse than I expected, but not as bad as I thought. And I know that doesn't make sense, but what I mean by it is it really could have killed me. It almost did, in fact. It broke through 2 layers of my skull. I had hematoma, I guess, bleeding on my brain and air on my brain. It was a real mess. But I missed 1 week of work. The treatment was just stitches and being a good boy for a few weeks. So something that could have been so bad was really minimally inconvenient, which is really pretty amazing. So anyway, after that CAT scan, I became a trauma patient. So I had ridden to the ER with Brianna, and then from the Bloomsburg ER to the Danville Trauma Center in an ambulance. And once you become a trauma patient, it's a whole new experience. That's when you're strapped to the table and your neck is in the neck brace, and they wheel you into the trauma bay, and that's an experience. They check everything, from your teeth to your toenails, and I do mean everything. Make sure that there's nothing that was missed, or that's protocol, I guess. But that's a creepy place to be. We're going to talk about the trauma center a little bit more in a minute. And that's where they put the stitches in, and from there I had to sleep 2 nights in their trauma center ICU, and then they sent me home, and I just healed. So, like I said, it was quite an experience, but it really not that inconvenient, all things considered. My brother had cut his hand. You know, I had a brain injury, he had a hand injury. I was out of work for a week, and he was out for months. So it's just amazing how it really does work out. Now that you know what happened, I want to circle back and touch on some things that were a little more personally important, I guess, to me. So I'm pretty fond of saying that most of the work God accomplishes on this earth, He does through the willingness and the hands of faithful servants. And that's not to say that God can't just unilaterally do things on earth. I am aware that he can, but it is my experience that he just usually chooses not to. He likes to accomplish things through people, through his church. That's the point of the church, I believe. So this experience really follows that trend. So first of all, my children. They were the first ones on scene. They were there when it happened. Bryce, in fact, saw it happen. So you could imagine how terrifying this would be. It split me open from my hairline to my eyebrow and all the way in, both layers of the skull and everything. So it was not a pretty wound. And when it first hit me, I don't know if you've ever had that adrenaline rush experience that comes with that type of an injury, but you start to kind of run like a chicken with your head cut off, and I was doing that for a second, maybe for longer than a second, but then I realized how bad I was terrifying my children, and I kind of had to grapple with it. I'm going to have to calm down and help them help me, because I need help, and I'm not going to be able to do all this myself, and they can't do it if I'm freaking them out this badly. So I gathered my feelings and my emotions, started talking to the kids more calmly. They got the phone, they called their mother. They handled it like troops, and I'm super proud of them and super grateful. They may well have saved my life, I don't know. I was knocked unconscious and laying on the ground, and they got me up. If I was all alone, I may have laid there a while. I really don't know, but anyway, I'm grateful to my kids, and I think they were able to handle that as well as they were, because they're being raised well, and and all of you are a part of that. So I'm grateful for that. Then obviously my wife, who stood by my side through the whole thing. I was rarely alone the whole time, which is nice because I really didn't want to be alone in that condition. And she was extremely gracious and kind to me throughout it. One thing that comes with a serious concussion or a brain injury like that, one of the side effects of which I was unaware of until actually living through it, you are on the edge of losing your temper for a few weeks. It does something to your emotional state and knocks you out of balance, and irritability is turned all the way up for a while. So I know I wasn't the most fun to be around, and my wife took phenomenally good care of me, and I'm grateful for that, of course, also. Next, my dad, which you guys know my dad, but he is not just a pretty face and a charming personality. There's more to the man than that. He is rock solid in a crisis, somehow. I did not inherit that trait, but I recognize it in him, and I am super grateful for it. So when I first got the news, I knew I was injured, obviously, lots of blood, but I didn't know my skull was broken. When they present you with that, okay, we looked at the imagery, you have a broken skull and you're now a trauma patient. That puts you right back, you're teetering on the edge of panic again. It's like, what does this actually mean? What's going to happen next? What will become of me? So I called my dad, and there's just something about he's able to maintain a calm demeanor and precise control of his emotions and a really objective focus. And it just helps you do along with him. It just helps you, okay, just focus on the next thing, bring down the tension, the hysteria, and his voice speaking into a situation like that, it's remarkably helpful. And I don't know if he always gets the appreciation he deserves for that, but there's a number of people who have benefited from it, at least all of his sons and a bunch of his nephews. So I'm grateful to my dad and the work the Lord did through him for me. Our pastor came. I talked to him throughout this situation, and he came and visited me in the hospital, which really did mean a lot to me. And we're lucky to have a pastor that cares as much as our pastor does, and shows up and tries to take care of people. And I'm extremely grateful for Pastor Shane, not just in this particular situation, but overall. Now, this one I think is really important, and I'm trying to make a point, and I hope I can make it as clear as I want to. But this church family, I didn't see a lot of you throughout this experience, but there was one moment in particular where I really thought about all of you, and it was when I was in the trauma center. That was the only time that I was really all by myself for a little bit, because Brianna wasn't able to travel in the ambulance with me. So I was just me and the doctors, briefly, but still, I didn't like it very much. And like I said, you're strapped to that table, they're checking you all over, you're getting needles, and they're pulling blood, and it's a very, very uncomfortable period of time. And I got the thought in my head, it's like, if ever I should be praying, like now's a good time to pray, because there's still a lot of uncertainty. They told me my skull was cracked all the way to my brain. I'm not even sure how to quantify what that even means. And now I'm alone, and I'm in this trauma center. I need to pray. And the odd thing was, I really couldn't. There was so much distractions. They're poking you here, pulling on you there, they're talking to each other, they're asking you questions, there's noises coming from the patient over here, doors are opening and closing. And then keep in mind, I had literally had a brain injury, so my ability to just string together that stream of consciousness that would have been a prayer, I couldn't really do it. And I would try, and, dear Lord, what's that sound? And I couldn't get myself to focus on it and do it. And then that was making me upset. I really need to, and I can't. And then the thought occurred to me, the realization came to me or whatever. I'm like, oh well, my mom's praying. She's praying. She's already called the Conklins, so there's some Conklins that are praying. Conklins are praying, and Andice is praying. Now, they've all filled in the church family. Now the church family's praying. I'm good for now. I'm just going to let them do the praying, and I'm going to be present in the room, answer the questions, cooperate with the doctors. And I don't want to say that praying was a burden, but in that moment, it felt it was burdensome to me that I couldn't really achieve it. And knowing that you guys were doing it for me really did lift something of a burden. So reflecting on that after the fact, after I had gotten better, what I realized is I've sat in these pews lots of times when somebody came up here and said, I want to thank you for your prayers. Your prayers mean a lot. Prayers really help. And I would always sit there and go, do they? How do you know? Are you sure? I guess. Well, now having gone through this, I can tell you objectively, your prayers help me in a direct, tangible way. And next time somebody comes up here and says, thank you for your prayers, I'll know exactly what they're talking about. So I'm very grateful to my church family for the prayers that I know all of you that knew about it prayed for me. Now, a little more on the outside of things, I found this really quite fascinating. My work has me going to some other factories and industries in the area, and this incident made its way through most of those places. Those places all know who I am. They found out about my injury. I was the subject of a couple of safety meetings at other facilities, apparently, which I'm not too proud of, but at least if I can help, I guess. But anyway, I went into one of these companies, and a gentleman in there that I barely know, only know him from meeting him a few times, a little more rough around the edges character, hanging out by his machine, smoking cigarettes, dropping the F-bomb, a rougher character. When I walked in there and he saw me, he came running over, pats me on the back, and says, I was so worried for you. I sent up so many prayers just for you. I was thinking about you. I was praying for you. And I was like, wow, that's something, all shapes and sizes, I guess. I wasn't expected to hear that from this individual. And that means something to me, that this guy, I don't know what his entire faith perspective is, but even this guy was praying for me. So I'm pretty blessed. I guess that's really about all I have for you. One more time, thanks to all of you. Be careful out there. It happens really fast.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, what a powerful testimony. And that's the point of a testimony, is to realize that what we are doing as a church is actually helpful, right? To recognize that a bit, and I'm very appreciative of Sam for sharing that today. We are going to dismiss kids, but first, before kids get up, I'm going to ask Cindy and Bree if they could go by the doors, and then you got that door back there. So